The attitude essay contest, I don't even know how it came up, but it went from 28 essays the first year. Now we get between 600 and 1,000. I joke with everybody that I take a day, I sit at home with a 2-liter bottle of Diet Pepsi and a huge box of tissues, and I read all the essays. And then we have judges, people with disabilities, teachers, whatever, who narrow it down to the top 6. It's for children, as I say, 3rd to 8th grade. We figure by 3rd grade they've got some decent writing skills. By 6th, 7th, 8th grade, they've pretty much formed their their opinion. And it is to get them to think. We send a reading list, for example, of books about disabilities. It's children with disabilities writing about their own attitude or writing about the attitude of others. It's children without disabilities interviewing a relative, reading a book and talking about how attitude affected the person in the book, or just writing about their own attitude. There was one essay written by a little girl, and it was not an essay, it was a poem. And it was about how she had begun joining her friends in making fun of a girl who had disabilities, and then started talking to the girl and realized that she was more like her than unlike her, and that they became friends all through school. Those are the kinds of essays that I just love to read. There was one little girl who wrote, she called her grandmother in Florida, and her grandmother had post-polio syndrome. And she interviewed her grandmother about how having a disability was difficult and that kind of stuff. The grandmother called me to thank me for the best conversation she had ever had with her granddaughter. And I still get choked up about some of these stories because I think the impact is far beyond just the essays that we get. There was one little girl that wrote a poem called Butterfly. And she had a friend who had cerebral palsy, was in a wheelchair, and the poem was about her imagining this friend of hers growing wings and being able to fly to anywhere she wanted and do anything she wanted. But then at the end of the poem, she got back to what was important to her about this friend, that she was a good friend. A lot of kids will write about Helen Keller or, other famous people. A lot of kids, again, will interview their parents. It's surprising how many more children of people with disabilities there are now than there were back in, the 50s and 60s. I think that's the general tenor of all the essays, is that they're very positive. Even if they tell a sad story about somebody being bullied, there's a lesson clearly that they've learned at the end of it, and a message that they're trying to get out. Often it's just the golden rule, which is a pretty simple, easy rule that just about covers everything. The really encouraging thing for me, and it's part of my general optimism, I believe that children are not born with bad attitudes about anybody, is that these essays are proof of that children will write about my friend Becky, who really likes Taylor Swift, and her favorite color is purple, and my favorite color is purple, and I like Taylor Swift, and oh yeah, she's in a wheelchair. But that's not the first thing they focus on. I firmly believe, and the essays prove, kids want to focus on what is the same, what is similar, what do they have in common with somebody, not what is something that's going to put up a barrier to them. And our hope is that there will be a generation of children who grow up understanding that people with disabilities are more like us than unlike us, so that the kinds of experiences that many of us have had in the past aren't going to happen again.